show for me that because this is my very first mini series, especially here on HAPPS, exclusive on HAPPS that you can only find here. The show is called The Review. This is going to be an American politics, a post-election explainer series. We're going to first start off the end of this week. It's going to be a soft opening today, and we're going to be looking at Arizona. There's so many hot topic issues that are happening there, that have happened there, and that we should be breaking down and looking forward to see what's continuing to happen. One of the big ones is the border wall, especially with COVID right now. So here with me today is a special guest, Eric Rosenwald. Eric has been doing some amazing work. Just yesterday, he went down to southern Arizona and kind of drove through checkpoints within the state to give an example, or to just show like a firsthand appearance of what it's like to actually drive through these said checkpoints. Eric, I'd love to talk a little bit about with you about Arizona and kind of just like this entire post-election kind of stasis of where it's at. So I guess to start off, I'd love to say, let's talk about COVID. I think that's the biggest thing, and specifically looking at what the governor talked about. So Arizona Governor Doug Ducey just on Wednesday said there's no statewide mask mandate, even though Arizona, and just like the rest of the country, has been smashed so hard by COVID. What do you think that the communities across Arizona are felt about this announcement?
Well, one thing I should say right off the bat is that in many respects, what he says about the mandate doesn't really have an impact on businesses. So if you're going to the grocery store can have their own policy on masks or any other business. So in a lot of ways, it doesn't really make much difference. However, he has received a lot of criticism for people who are very diligent about mask wearing protection. So there have been even some calls to recall Doug Ducey for this choice. But like I said, the fact that people are going to continue wearing masks, it's not going to have a huge impact, but it has upset many people here because they feel like he's not doing enough to protect the people. There've been plenty of stories from the beginning of COVID. Plenty of stories where there's been some sort of criticism of the governor, and the criticisms always revolve around the idea that he's not doing enough to protect the people. So it's just sort of more in that line of reasoning. His critics are saying he doesn't do enough, and his supporters are saying, well, we need to not have these kinds of restrictions, and often their arguments revolve around business, that it's hurting business or the economy, which is really a debate that's happening around the country. So that's how it fits into that.
You know, Eric, some people have said it was very contradictory on Wednesday when Governor Ducey went out there, gave this mandate, or gave this non-existing mandate, did not tell anyone to actually wear masks. But then at the end, gave an honorarium, or just, gave a moment for the 6,400 people who've died to COVID so far in Arizona. I think it was just really interesting to see how all these people kind of called him out on that, saying, well, you're going to give you're going to take a moment of time to honor the people who've fallen, but you're not going to try and protect all those who are still alive that could be at risk. I think I just wanted to ask, specifically the Phoenix mayor called Governor Ducey out specifically, and really condemned him and his actions, and that there should be a mandate. Was this something that you've seen across with the other government officials, such as mayors in other cities or towns?
Yes, the mayor of Tucson, just a little bit of background. Arizona is traditionally a red state, obviously not this year. There's a lot changing there, but it has always, since its existence, has leaned a lot more conservative. And so Tucson is actually one of the more liberal Democrat-leaning cities it's actually the second largest city, but it's really the core support for Democrats is coming from Tucson. There are urban parts of Phoenix, of course, that tend to go Democrat, but it's really Tucson that is known for being a more liberal city. So the mayor here has been very vocal about her opposition to Governor Doug Ducey's policies. That's definitely something that is evident here in town. There is criticism from government officials.
No, completely, completely. We have a comment in the chat from Cher Rainbow777 from Twitter says personal free will is a personal choice. Or free will choice. I think that really was exemplified with some of the Arizona counties, cities, and towns because it's not up to the full statewide government to enact a mandate. It's held up to the each of the city, towns, and counties to put this mandate into place. And some of them have never even done so before. And some of these city, counties, and towns have actually repealed their previous mask mandates that they did in the summer or earlier in the fall. Do you think that people were upset by some of these towns repealing mask mandates, or do you just think that it's not really bothering too many people, or is that what people have been saying? Eric, we can't hear you. I think you're on mute.
Sorry, there we go. Um, for the most part, it's not something you hear people talking about. There are people that are very vocal about it, especially you see it on social media. But when I'm just around town, I really don't hear it as being an issue out in public, just talking to people. I think there are those people that feel very strongly about it. But at the end of the day, we're all wearing masks when we go into public places. It's such a part of life that it kind of doesn't make much difference. So some people are upset, but most people they know you got to wear a mask. It protects everyone, and there's a lot of social pressure to do that. I'm sure many people that don't want to be wearing masks just don't want to be in altercations with people. Sometimes that happens. There are plenty of stories of that around the country. Someone didn't wear a mask, someone standing too close. So it's not a really big deal, on a street level. It's more something people are talking about on social media.
Completely, completely. I want to shift our focus a little bit to another big topic, and that had to do with the Senate race in Arizona, specifically looking at the Senate race with Mark Kelly and Martha McSally. I think both of them were from Tucson, and that's actually where you're based at and you represent the most at as a journalist. I'd love to know a little bit about what this hometown rivalry was between these two, big combatants in this election. What was the feeling like down in Tucson, and what did the community? What were the communities like?
Well, it's really, I think that's a good way to put it, a hometown rivalry. You have two. There are some really interesting similarities in their past and history. First of all, one of the most important things to mention about Mark Kelly is that he is the husband of Gabrielle Giffords, the congresswoman who was shot in Tucson. I believe it was like 2012 or something like that, early 2010s. And so that was a really big issue. Obama gave a speech at the university here. It was a tough time for the community, and so Mark Kelly has a lot of history with that. People know who he is from that, and he gradually started to get involved in gun regulation issues, and just sort of developed kind of a political portfolio of his own, aside from being the husband of Gabrielle Giffords. He has so Martha McSally is also from Tucson. And she was one of the first female combat pilots in the U.S. Air Force. And let's see here. Davis Monthan Air Force Base is in Tucson. It's one of the major employers in the city. There have been times in the past where the Air Force has considered closing the base. And there's plenty of opposition from people in Tucson just because it's such an important part of the community. So it just so happens that Martha McSally flew A-10 combat jets, in the Gulf War. I think that's when she first started to fly there. But this particular aircraft is very tied to the local community because it is the anchor for the base here. It's the primary aircraft that's based here. So there's a lot of affinity for this aircraft here. It actually turns out the Air Force Base is right in the middle of town, and it's kind of nice because it's one of the quietest aircraft in the Air Force inventory, and people here are really passionate about it. And so she flew that plane. She has credibility. In fact, she often wears a necklace that has the aircraft fashioned on it. So she wears that regularly. I constantly see her with that. So she's really repping the community here. So that's one source of her credibility in southern Arizona, and there is some bipartisan appreciation for that. Now, Mark Kelly was an astronaut, and before that, he was a naval aviator. So, and he flew in combat too. So, not only is it a hometown rivalry, you have two military veterans flying combat jets. And that's kind of interesting too, because that's exactly what John McCain did. So it's really interesting how this profession is such a big part of the Arizona Senate history. Of course, John McCain was a longtime senator from Arizona. So you have this rivalry going on, but it's people like to see that it's someone local, and whoever wins is definitely going to represent the local community. So there's been a lot of polls that leading up to this that were showing that Mark Kelly was favored. There was a real sense in Arizona that this would be the year that Arizona would go blue again. I believe the last time that happened was 1996 for Bill Clinton's second election. And then the last time before that was, I believe, decades. I mean, it's a very rare thing. So Mark Kelly is running in a race that was already leaning possibly towards Democrats. So in some ways, it was really good timing for him that he ran in an election where you had a very controversial president, and Arizona actually did turn blue. So in some sense, the Mark Kelly election is tied. You can't look at it in a vacuum by any means. There are many things in Arizona that were traditionally more Democrat, liberal policies or candidates that they fared stronger than they usually do in a state that's usually very Republican.
And I think you brought up an amazing point, specifically looking at, why did Kelly, come up on top above Mick Sally? I think that was a huge upset to the Republican community, especially after, you went out there to some of the protests and to some of the ballot protests where a lot of Republican groups or communities came together and were protesting the counting, saying that this was a tampered election. But then when they talked about the Senate race, they just said that it was tampered and that this was just something that they did not accept. I think specifically looking at this specifically, there's been enough time. I think that hopefully the community has accepted the results, but specifically thinking why did Kelly come up on top, and why do you think this was such an upset, and that it seems like a lot of the people didn't think it was even going to happen?
Well, one thing is it's been clear for months too that many Republicans have been upset with and disappointed with McSally. She has a history. I don't know all the finer details of it, but she has a voting history related to Obamacare that upset many people. But some of the strongest criticism she's had is not from what you would expect from the left, from Democrats. There are many Republicans that were disappointed in her, and many of them thought that she wasn't conservative enough. and that she was too far to the left. So she was definitely hurting among many Republicans in the state, and in a state where it's just razor thin margins between Democrats and Republicans. In this instance, in this election year, it was just, it sounds like that was a big part of why it was too much for her to overcome. She really needed the base, and there were plenty in her base that were sick of her and considered her too liberal, too not conservative enough. So that's something in Arizona that can get you in trouble if you are a Republican.
Completely. And I think, looking a little bit more at the specific voters and how important, seeing who the voters are, there was a huge surge in the Latinx voters in this most recent election. Specifically, the numbers grew from 19.6% all the way to 24.6%. And that surge was mostly because of thousands of younger generations actually became able to vote in this most recent election. And that's what really pushed them forward. And specifically looking at the relationship between the Latinx community and their viewpoint towards the former President Donald Trump and his interactions, his relationship, or just his stance with racism, with the border, with immigration, and with honestly just the handling of COVID altogether, played a huge effect in this entire election, as well as we can see specifically here in Arizona. But it was the Latinx community, at least through this research and through the research in Arizona that political analysts have done, that really identified that was the community that swayed the vote in Mark Kelly's favor. And speaking of Donald Trump, let's turn and look at the national election. Again, we were out there, I was hosting with you, and we went out there to the ballot protest, and for hours, all day long, there was just protest after protest. QAnon came out. It was a big deal for this community. It turned into a dance party at one point, and it was all during the midst of even President-elect Joe Biden when he was giving his own acceptance speech. And many of the Republican supporters there, believe that that it wasn't even real yet. They haven't accepted it yet. But I think looking at it now, I'd love to know a little bit about why. Why do you think the community has finally accepted that President-elect Joe Biden is going to be the next president?
I think the community has, as a whole. I think that especially that weekend right after the election, when we were covering this in Phoenix, the ballot protests, there was still a lot of energy left over from the election. And as you know, when we were doing the broadcast, many people didn't really have an end game in mind. They didn't really have any ideas about what could happen that would make them accept the outcome. So it's important too to remember that the people that showed up to those ballot protests in general were more fringe people. I mean, there were plenty of QAnon people there. There were some just normal supporters of Trump, but it really is a really hardcore Trump supporter community that showed up to those. But as time goes on, as the facts come out more, as you see conservative media pundits now saying, "Look, guys, this is over." They're having an influence clearly on it. So I think it's something that's just sort of gradually dying down as far as opposition to the election results, I should say challenges about the legitimacy of the election here. They're just gradually dying down for the most part. But there is a core group of people that's really motivated to research it, and they're still there. But for the most part, it's dying down.
It's good to know that it is dying down, especially since as time passes, it seems like it's harder for communities to keep up that kind of resistance. But I think one of the big things that's important to know is Donald Trump's I guess just resistance to not telling his community or his supporters to stand down, and instead to just try and unite with the opposing party. We've seen President-elect Joe Biden have stated this multiple times. The Democratic Party has said it multiple times that now is not a time to fight anymore. It's a time to come together in unison. And I think looking at the Republican side, there's so many groups and communities that are still holding out in dire hopes that this is not real, that this is still fake, that this is that there was some kind of mistake or a glitch in the matrix, that it's delaying the healing process that needs to happen for the country to move forward. And specifically, that's what this mini series is all about. What happens next? And I think the next biggest thing, as we said in many of the other broadcasts, is it's working together to create a unison party between both the Democrats and the Republicans, and then focusing on COVID as in general. And so, like, even looking at COVID, going back to that and bringing it down to Arizona, what do you think the community do you, or let me ask, with the mask mandate not being in place, are there a lot of people who do wear masks? Or what's happening in that?
Most people wear masks in public. I mean, it's just a reality. For the most part, Arizona has a lower population density. Of course, we have our cities and everything, but people just wear them. There's a large retirement community in Arizona, especially in Tucson too. And so I think some of these sort of anti-mask people and sentiments, you just don't see it quite as much because people have a lot of family that's older, and it just only makes sense. And this is part of why, I was saying the mask mandate, whether it's in place or not, it's not really going to have that much of an impact because people just wear the masks. There are a few people who don't. I've come across people that are angry that the people around them are wearing masks. There have been a few instances where I've just been puzzled by it, that some people are just very, very passionate and fired up about not wanting to wear a mask, and accusing everyone else of listening to what the government is saying, and things like that. But those people are very rare. It seems like something that people have just adapted to. So people are being safe in general, and whether or not the mandate is in effect, that's generally going to be the case. And that's not to say that businesses are really the ones who really mandate them. The government can make a statewide mandate, and that has certain legal implications. But all the things that we do or most of the things we do that would require a mask involve some sort of private property, a business, a
Mhm.
place that you're going to and spending time in, where they have every right to make you wear the mask or ask you to leave. So it's just you don't see it talked about that much here.
Right. No, and really quick, I just wanted to say a quick hello to everyone who's watching us on HAPS, on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, and anything else. We just wanted to thank you for joining in on this broadcast. It's a special soft launch of our new mini series called The Review, where we look at the American politics post-election, kind of a explainer series that we're going to be doing for the next few weeks here on HAPS. Eric, kind of going back to you, I want to, earlier I mentioned that one of the downfalls with President Trump in Arizona had to deal with immigration issues, and specifically with the creation of the border wall and kind of the ecological destruction that it's caused in the southern Arizona area. You were out there just yesterday, an entire day of broadcasting. It was really remarkable. I was there for the first part of it, and we went along with you. We saw the checkpoints, in-state checkpoints, and what it was like. I'd love to hear about what the rest of your experience was out there, and kind of tell the viewers a little bit about what you did and what you learned and what maybe other people learned too.
Sure. It was a fun day. It was a cool day to experience what it was like going to some of these areas. Most of my experience in Arizona borderlands is further east of where I went, in some of the more higher montane grassland type areas. Yesterday was a trip to more of the lower Sonoran Desert. So I wasn't as experienced traveling to those border areas. So it was exciting to bring the viewer along on this trip. I was able to flip the camera around, show what it looks like going on the road. going through these checkpoints that are part of daily life out there. And I just wanted to give the viewers a chance to see what it looks like up close, not just a bunch of B-roll, but that you so often see in legacy news media. I wanted you to get an on the ground view of it, and it was great to have guests that really have a lot of expertise reporting down there, and all kinds of activity as far as ecological conservation. Of course, security is the big issue with the wall, with illegal immigration, but ecological destruction is a huge issue too. So one thing that's great about HAPPS that I love is you can read the comments, you can see what people think, and for the people who didn't care about the ecological part, they said, well, it doesn't really matter. It's the countries at threat, or there are too many threats coming from across the border. So yeah, that's great about the ecological stuff, but it doesn't matter in the big picture. And then you have people pointing out, well, it doesn't really work the way many people say it does, and we're dealing with destruction of habitats that are very fragile, and species that could easily go extinct. So it was great to talk to them about it, but also get out of my car and walk around. It was nice showing the port of entry. At one point, I actually was able to get in the shot some of these really, really cool, interesting, sophisticated machines that scan vehicles, like an X-ray, basically, to look inside, see if drugs or people are inside. That was another aspect. I not only wanted people to see what the land was like, but just see what everyday life was like. I was right at the gas station, right next to the port of entry. It's all clustered in a very tight area, but also bring some attention to the construction, the wall construction projects. They're huge, huge. It looks like a little mini military base out there where tractors and bulldozers, cranes, all kinds of construction equipment, everything you could think of is out there in large numbers. And one thing I also noticed looking back too is that many construction vehicles were driving up and down the highway to get to Lukeville. So yeah, I definitely want to do more reporting like that to give people this closer, more personal view of the border. So I was excited about it. And coming back, it was fine. I left the area right about sunset. I got a few drone shots, but it was a safe trip back. Had a more involved search when I came through the checkpoint, but they talked to me for a moment. Are you a U.S. citizen? A few questions like that. Can you roll your windows down so I can see into your car, the back? And they let me through. There was one car that was there that they were tearing it apart. I mean, like, all the items were being pulled out. There was a dog there. I couldn't see anything beyond that, but yeah, I was really happy to bring people along and give them an idea of what it's like down there.
Eric, do you have any more road trips? I guess that's what we called it the other day. Planned for the viewers here at HAPS?
I do. I mean, I don't have any scheduled right now, but I definitely want to do some broadcasts within the coming 2 weeks from Nogales, Arizona, which is another famous border town here. So in the coming weeks, I definitely will be back.
Well, great. We'll be on the lookout for that. And especially everyone who's here viewing us right now. I hope everyone else is watching and looking out for Eric's stuff. Eric's a great freelance reporter in Arizona, and I know I'll be looking out for that as well. Just a quick recap with everything that we've said tonight. We've gone over coronavirus with what Governor Doug Ducey in Arizona has stated. There's been no mask mandate in Arizona moving forward. Just in his press conference on Wednesday, there's been about since Wednesday, 6,400 deaths in Arizona. There's been a vigil. There's been it's been left up to the counties, the cities, and the towns to put on their own mandates and their own protection plans, but nothing provided by the state. Looking specifically at the Senate race, Senate-elect Mark Kelly was the one who beat the incumbent and is now joining in the Senate. It's a Democratic seat Senate now moving forward. He joins Democratic Kristen Sinema as Arizona holds both of these seats, which is a huge flip from what it was just, years ago, where it was a split just 2 years ago, and then now it's completely blue. And then in the national election, we saw that Arizona has flipped blue moving forward, and we've talked about the Latinx vote being one of the biggest reasons. We also talked about the border wall, the immigration issues, the racist comments with President Trump, and one other interesting key fact that I did have here that I wanted to throw out there was that it was also, if people were take a second to remember, President Trump's comments a while back about former Senator John McCain and what about his life being captured during the war. And those comments really hit home with a lot of the people, veterans, and a lot of people in Arizona. And that was another big reason as to why his fan base got smaller and smaller, and people started flipping and turning more towards the blue side than staying in the red zone. So those were some of the main things. I want to thank everyone today for listening, viewing, and watching us here on HAPPS. This is a soft launch of our newest mini series called The Review, an American politics explainer series exclusive here on HAPPS. And here with me again tonight is Eric Rosenwald, a freelance reporter in Arizona. And my name is Marco Torres. We want to thank you all for joining us, and thank you.